Good morning. Today we are going to be looking at how to graph linear equations. Please start by making sure you have your proper heading. Our goal is to be able to answer the question, how do I graph linear equations? Just a recall from last week, our slope-intercept form of an equation is y equals mx plus b, where m we remember is the slope and b we remember is the y-intercept. When we are going to be graphing an equation, we want it always to be in slope-intercept form to be able to figure out the graph a little bit more easy. So once it's in slope-intercept form, we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept as our first steps. And then after we've identified the slope and the y-intercept, we are going to graph the y-intercept, and then I'll go to the y-axis and graph the y-intercept, and then from that y-intercept we're going to use the slope that we found to find two more points in order to draw a line through all 3 points. I'd like us to use 3 points minimum before drawing our line. Alright, I'm going to go over here and write one of my left side questions to help me remember this. I'm going to start with what do we need to identify before graphing a line. That way when I'm studying, I can go ahead and remind myself before I start graphing a line, I need to identify the slope and the y-intercept. Then I might do another left side question that is, do we use the slope or y-intercept first and graphing a line? And looking back to my notes, I can see that I find them both at the same time, but I actually graph the y-intercept before I use the slope in graphing. Alright, so now that we have our 4 steps, let's look at an example and see how do we use these 4 steps. Let's say we'd like to graph the following example, y equals 2x minus 1. My steps work if I'm in slope-intercept form, so I have to ask myself, is this actually in slope-intercept form? So I see y equals mx plus b. Okay, great. It's in slope-intercept form, where my m is my coefficient in front of the x, so I can go ahead and write down that my slope is 2, and the y-intercept is the constant that's being added or subtracted in that b location. In this case, it's a minus 1. So when I go to my graph, it's kind of hard to see on the scale, but each of these, the scale here on my page is counting by ones. So the first thing I do, remember I asked myself, which do I do first? I found the slope and the y-intercept, now step 2, graph the y-intercept. So my y-intercept is -1. So of course I have my x and y axis. I'm going to go to my y-axis and go down to -1. Okay, next, step 3. From the y-intercept, use the slope to find 2 more points. So my slope is 2, which when I think of slope, I think of rise over run. So for me, this 2 is easier to use in a fraction form. So I know that 2 is the same as 2 over 1. So I'm going to start here and go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So I have my 3-point minimum. If I'd like now, I can draw my line. If I wanted, I could make as many points as I wanted. I could keep going up 2 over 1 until I actually run out of space on my graph. And I'm kind of wanting to go this way, so I'm not drawing a crooked line, but I only have up 2 over 1. So I'm going to rewrite this as -2 over -1, which is the same thing because a negative over a negative is a positive, but that allows me to continue down 2 over 1, down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1, just so that I can go ahead and draw this out straight. But again, this is way overkill. You don't have to make this many points to make your line. You really only need 3 points as your minimum. Okay, what about this one, example 2? Before I start, I have to check, am I in slope-intercept form? So I look here, y equal, no, this does not say y equals mx plus b. This is not in slope-intercept form. So I'm actually going to add another left side question. And your left side questions don't have to be the same as mine, but these are some examples. I have here, how do I rewrite an equation to be in slope-intercept form? It's actually not the best left side question. Maybe I could have asked myself something like, what do I do if my equation's not in slope-intercept form? How would I graph it then? Something along those lines. But for now, I'll leave it. Luckily, you wrote in pencil, so you can change yours if you need to rephrase. All right, so before I even try to pick out numbers for slope and y-intercept, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this so that it is in slope-intercept form. I'm going to copy it down first so I can organize all of my work. And I know that I'm solving for y because my goal is to get it into slope-intercept form so that it says y equals mx plus b. I want to get rid of this 3x, so I'll do that to both sides. Remember, both sides is both sides of that equal sign. I have it once on the left and once on the right. I don't like to line these up next to each other because they're not like terms, so I just put it off to the side. These cancel. I'm left with 2y equals, I could write -4 minus 3x, but I'm going to write it as minus 3x minus 4, which is the same thing, but now it's closer to slope-intercept form. This 2 is being multiplied to the y, so to undo it on both sides, I'll divide both sides by 2, which my 2's cancel on this side. I'm left with y equals, now this 2 belongs to both of these terms, so I'm left with -3/2 x minus 4 over 2, which can be simplified to y equals -3/2 x minus 4 over 2 is 2. Which now I can see a little bit more clearly. My slope, which is the coefficient in front of the x, and my y-intercept. Do not forget that that negative is a part of my y-intercept. So my slope, -3/2, my y-intercept, -2. Trying to color code to help myself organize my thoughts a little bit better. You may do so if you'd like. Alright, so going back to my steps, it says identify the slope of my intercept. It took us a lot longer because it wasn't in slope-intercept form, but we got to it. Next step, graph the y-intercept. My y-intercept is -2, so I'm going to go ahead and put that -2 on there. That is my y-intercept. Trying to make it orange, but it's not appearing very well. Okay, my slope is -3 over 2. You have the choice. You can either write this as -3 over 2, or you can write this as 3 over -2. Both are the same exact thing as -3/2. It just tells you which way you're going. So I'm gonna use this first one, -3 over 2. It tells me from the y-intercept, use the slope to find 2 more points. So if I wrote it this way, I can say go down 3 because negative 1, 2, 3 over 2, 1, 2, positive 2 to the right. Had I used this one, then I would have ended up with 1, 2, 3, -2 is to the left. And as you can see, this is still going to be the same line because when I draw them out, they would be on the same line regardless of which way I chose to do my negative. And that's it.